Hold on a second, because what I am about to say might just shatter everything you thought you knew about DMX, Aaliyah, and the story behind Romeo Must Die. For years, people whispered about Aaliyah's relationships with R. Kelly, Jay-Z, and Dame Dash, but DMX? That name was never in the headlines, not until now. And if you believe what DMX's ex-wife, Tashira Simmons, revealed, Aaliyah was not just a passing memory in their marriage. She was the ghost that never left. Tashira once confessed that no matter how much love she poured into their marriage, DMX never truly let go of Aaliyah. He made it clear, brutally clear, that no woman could ever replace her. He even named his daughter Aaliyah after the singer's tragic passing, almost as if he was trying to resurrect the love he lost. Imagine being a wife, and knowing your husband's heart beats for someone else, someone who is no longer even alive. The internet would have exploded if this came out today. Twitter threads, TikTok theories, YouTube breakdowns. All dissecting the same painful truth: DMX's heart never came home. But what was it about Aaliyah that had DMX, the hardcore rapper, the man who wore pain like armor, completely undone? The two first crossed paths on the set of Romeo Must Die. Aaliyah was the radiant star of the film. DMX, playing the role of Silk, was the rugged contrast, street energy meeting angelic calm. On-screen chemistry? Electric. But off-screen, something deeper began to stir. While recording Come Back in one piece for the movie soundtrack, they spent hours together, talking, laughing, connecting. Two souls who should have been nothing alike, somehow syncing like they had known each other for lifetimes. And here is the twist: DMX was already married. Tashira Simmons was not just any wife, she was his childhood sweetheart, the girl who stood by him through struggle and chaos. Yet none of that stopped him from falling under Aaliyah's spell. And that spell, oh, it was real. Ask anyone who met her. Men did not just like Aaliyah, they fell. They stumbled, they lost control, they worshipped her presence. There was something magnetic, dangerous, about her quiet confidence. She had the kind of beauty that made even the toughest men crumble. And DMX, despite his rough exterior and no-love persona, was no exception. He once said Aaliyah had a light that could make a whole room stop breathing. So when Tashira said Aaliyah was a constant factor in their marriage, maybe she was not exaggerating. Maybe DMX was haunted, not by a woman, but by a legend. Whenever DMX spoke about Aaliyah, something in his voice changed. It softened, almost trembled. This was not the gruff, untouchable rapper fans were used to hearing. This was a man remembering someone he could never quite let go of. He called her an angel on earth. His eyes would light up when her name was mentioned, as if even her memory could pierce through the chaos of his life. And then came that story, the one that made Tashira's heart stop. DMX once rented a Rolls-Royce, not for his wife, but for himself, Aaliyah, and her brother to attend an award show together. Think about that. Up until that point, the only woman who had ever stood beside him at an award show was his wife, Tashira. Yet this time, it was not her hand he held, it was Aaliyah's presence he chose to showcase to the world. A silent announcement. A public confession. The world may not have noticed it back then, but for Tashira, that was the night she realized something sacred had shifted. And the question everyone still whispers today: did something happen between DMX and Aaliyah? DMX never confirmed it. He only ever said that Aaliyah was someone he respected, someone with whom he shared a deep spiritual connection. Those words, deep spiritual connection, became fuel for endless speculation. Fans dissected interviews, watched body language, replayed music videos, trying to decode the truth hidden between glances and half-smiles. But Aaliyah? She was a vault. She never spoke about her private life, not even when the world pried. There was mystery in her silence, a calm, regal energy that drew people in but never let them too close. She smiled softly, carried herself with unshakable grace, and built walls no fame could climb. If there was more between her and DMX, she took it to the grave, wrapped in that same quiet dignity that made the world fall in love with her. Tashira, on the other hand, was not silent. Not anymore. She spoke her truth, raw, unfiltered, and painful. She admitted that Aaliyah's presence lingered in her marriage like a third heartbeat. She said that every time DMX looked at Aaliyah, there was a softness she had never seen before. It hurt. It broke her. Because how do you compete with someone who radiates perfection without even trying? She recalled the day that shattered her, the day she stood on the set of Come Back in one piece. It was a typical music video scene, cameras flashing, assistants rushing, directors shouting. But amid all that chaos, Tashira saw something that silenced the noise. There was Aaliyah, sitting beside DMX, the two laughing quietly as if the world around them did not exist. Then, without thinking, DMX reached over and rubbed Aaliyah's arm, tenderly. Almost absent-mindedly. The kind of touch that does not belong to friendship. For Tashira, time froze. The laughter faded, the lights blurred, and all she could hear was the sound of her own heart breaking. It was not a scandalous scene or a public betrayal, it was worse. It was intimacy without apology. In that moment, she realized that it was not about rumors or tabloids. It was about connection, something deeper than flesh, something that no marriage certificate could compete with. DMX had told her she was overreacting, that Aaliyah was like a little sister to him. But she knew. She saw the look in his eyes, the quiet worship behind his words. And she knew that even if nothing physical ever happened, emotionally, she had already lost him. She went home that night a ghost, living in a love that was already bleeding out. Every time DMX smiled, she wondered if he was remembering Aaliyah. Every late-night studio session became a battlefield between trust and suspicion. Fame only made the cracks bigger, the silence heavier. Because sometimes, betrayal does not come with confessions or scandals. Sometimes, it comes in the form of a lingering gaze, a quiet laugh, and a love that never needed to be spoken to be real. Aaliyah was rising, effortlessly, gracefully, like a star that had already accepted her place among the heavens. Her career was unstoppable, her reputation untouchable. She did not chase attention, attention chased her. She never engaged in gossip, never responded to whispers. That silence, that deliberate calm, became her power. Because when you refuse to explain yourself, the world is forced to imagine. And imagine they did. Fans, journalists, even those closest to her, everyone projected their own stories onto her, because she never told her own. To the public, she was angelic, pure, mysterious, almost untouchable. But those who truly knew her? They saw a woman who was loyal to the core yet careful with her heart. She loved deeply, but selectively. Whether she felt something real for DMX beyond friendship, that remains one of R&B's greatest unsolved mysteries. Maybe it was spiritual. Maybe it was emotional. Or maybe it was something neither of them could name out loud, a connection that defied logic, one that blurred the sacred line between love and destiny. DMX, on the other hand, was chaos incarnate, a walking contradiction. He was wild, raw, aggressive on stage, but inside? He was a storm searching for peace. Around Aaliyah, something in him changed. His laugh came easier. His eyes softened. The rage that usually roared inside him quieted, even if just for a moment. She brought light into his darkness. And for a man who had been fighting demons all his life, that kind of light was addictive, dangerous, even. Tashira saw that. And that was the heartbreak, because she was not just competing with another woman, she was competing with tranquility. Aaliyah represented everything DMX had been chasing: innocence, redemption, the purity he had lost somewhere along the way. How does a wife compete with the idea of salvation? Tashira tried to rebuild. She played her role, smiled for cameras, showed up when the world expected her to. But the truth was, something between them had fractured beyond repair. Every argument circled back to Aaliyah, even when her name was never spoken. Every silence carried a ghost. DMX would insist nothing happened, that Aaliyah was just a friend, someone he respected, someone he admired. But emotion does not obey logic. It does not stay within the lines we draw for it. What he called respect often felt like longing. What he called friendship sometimes looked too much like love. And then, tragedy struck. Aaliyah's plane went down in the Bahamas. The world stopped. Millions wept for a star gone too soon. But for DMX, it was not just a headline, it was personal. His grief was raw, visible, unfiltered. In interviews, you could hear the pain in his voice, the cracks, the tremble, the pauses that said everything words could not. When he spoke about her, it sounded less like a statement and more like a prayer. To Tashira, it was agony all over again, watching the man she loved mourn another woman like she had been his last tether to peace. Those close to DMX said he never stopped talking about her. He would reminisce about her laugh, her humility, her kindness. He called her baby girl long after she was gone. And he meant it, not in a casual way, but like it was sacred. Because to him, Aaliyah symbolized something pure, something the world could never corrupt. She was his reminder of who he wanted to be, before fame and pain tore him apart. Maybe that is why she haunted him. Because when someone sees the real you, not the image, not the mask, but the broken, trembling soul underneath, you never forget them. DMX was surrounded by people, but Aaliyah had understood him. And once you've been understood that deeply, everything else feels hollow. Tashira, with time, learned to let go. Pain does not disappear, it transforms. She focused on her children, on her own healing, on rediscovering herself outside the shadow of his fame and heartbreak. She forgave him, not because he deserved it, but because she needed peace. She said forgiveness was the only way to breathe again. But she admitted, quietly, almost wistfully, that she would never forget that one day on set. That look. That touch. That laugh. The moment she realized she had lost him, not to infidelity, but to something far more dangerous, emotional eternity. The story of DMX and Aaliyah is not just about love. It is about timing. Two souls meeting when the universe was not ready for them. A bond too pure for a world obsessed with scandal. It was love that never became, and yet, somehow, it lived on. You can hear it in DMX's music, the ache in his lyrics, the weight in his delivery, the way his tone softened when he spoke her name. It was grief and reverence intertwined. And even now, decades later, when people talk about them, it is never casual. It is always with a pause, a sigh, a sense of mystery, because some stories never end. They just echo. And maybe that is the cruel beauty of it all, that something so brief could echo for so long. Even though Aaliyah is gone, and DMX too has left this world, the memory of their bond still lingers like smoke, a whisper of what was, and what could have been. Two souls who met for a fleeting moment, yet left behind an imprint that refuses to fade. Tashira's pain became part of that story too, the unseen cost of their connection. Because behind every tale of love and destiny, there is always another story, the heartbreak of the one left standing in the ashes. Her pain was not loud, but it was powerful. It carried the weight of sacrifice, loyalty, and the quiet strength of a woman who loved deeply, and lost silently. In the end, everyone played their part. Aaliyah, the angelic muse who never let the world glimpse her private sorrow. DMX, the tortured poet who found peace only in her presence. And Tashira, the woman who stood in the storm, loved through the chaos, and walked away carrying the kind of strength only heartbreak can forge. Their fates collided, intertwined, and burned, a story too tragic to forget, too human to deny. And though the truth about what really happened between DMX and Aaliyah may never be known, one thing remains undeniable: they changed each other. Their connection, however fleeting, shaped their lives, their music, and their legacies. It became a symbol of everything beautiful and broken about love, the kind that heals and destroys in the same breath. But before the world ever knew any of this, there was another chapter. One buried deep behind the smiles, behind the interviews, behind the perfectly curated image of what celebrity love is supposed to look like. Tashira knew something was wrong long before the world did. She tried to ignore it, to swallow her intuition, to believe that what she was seeing was just professional chemistry. After all, both of them were artists, emotional, passionate, magnetic. And Aaliyah? She was the kind of woman everyone liked. Warm, graceful, impossible to hate. So Tashira bit her tongue. Because in the world she lived in, women like her were never allowed to break. She told herself that the laughter she saw, the glances that lingered a moment too long, meant nothing. She told herself it was just her insecurities playing tricks on her. Because the alternative, believing her husband's heart belonged to someone else, was too unbearable to face. She held on to hope like a lifeline. She wanted to believe DMX respected her, their marriage, their vows. Until the truth shattered that illusion. When she found out about the affair, it was not just betrayal, it was devastation. In her memoir, Tashira wrote that it broke something inside her, something she could never fully rebuild. She had endured his infidelities before, nameless women, fleeting flings, public humiliation, but this was different. This was Aaliyah. Someone she admired. Someone she never saw as a threat. This was not just cheating. This was the collapse of everything she believed in. That one broke something in me, she said. Simple words. Heavy truth. It was not jealousy. It was not rivalry. It was betrayal of trust. The kind that goes beyond physical. The kind that dismantles the soul. She had stood by DMX through addiction, chaos, and fame. She had defended him when the world called him lost. And yet, he had chosen to break her heart in a way that felt almost personal, as if love itself had betrayed her. And fame? Fame does not protect you from pain, it amplifies it. It turns your private heartbreak into public spectacle. It makes your tears a headline, your silence a scandal. While Tashira was at home, trying to understand how to breathe again, the world was already talking. The whispers spread like wildfire. Every photo, every song, every interview became a cruel reminder of the story she was forced to live through. Because it is one thing to be betrayed behind closed doors, and another to have that betrayal consumed by millions. The spotlight does not soften heartbreak, it magnifies it. It turns every scar into a mirror, reflecting your pain for the world to see. And through it all, Tashira had to smile. Had to stay composed. Had to be the strong one. But strength is not the absence of pain, it is surviving it. And when you look back at their story now, Aaliyah's light, DMX's torment, Tashira's resilience, it feels less like a scandal and more like a tragedy. Three people bound together by love, fame, and fate. A story that began with connection, and ended with consequence. Maybe that is what makes it unforgettable. Because some stories do not fade with time, they linger in the air, heavy with emotion, whispering from one generation to the next. DMX once said that Aaliyah was an angel on earth. Maybe he was right. Maybe she came into his life to remind him of the light before he sank too deep into the dark. And maybe, in some strange, cosmic way, they were meant to find each other, not to love, but to awaken something sacred inside the other. And that is the haunting truth. Two souls who met in the right way, at the wrong time. A wife who loved through silence. And a love story that never had to be confirmed, because everyone who saw it could already feel it. But strength, real strength, does not always look like silence. Sometimes, it looks like walking away, with your head held high. When Tashira finally reached her breaking point, when she realized that the marriage she had fought so hard to protect was slowly draining the life out of her, she did the one thing no one expected: she chose herself. Filing for divorce was not revenge. It was survival. It was her way of reclaiming every piece of herself she had lost in the shadow of someone else's fame. And when she finally spoke, not out of bitterness, not for attention, but for truth, people began to see her differently. They saw the quiet courage behind her calm. The grace in her restraint. She did not expose DMX to destroy him, she told her story to free herself. And that kind of honesty? That is power. In a world obsessed with drama and destruction, Tashira chose peace. She chose healing. She chose to rebuild without burning everything down. Fans started calling her gangster, not because she sought revenge, but because she carried herself with unshakable dignity. She did not drag Aaliyah's name through the mud. She did not lash out. She simply walked away. And let us be real, nobody would have blamed her if she had exploded. If she had turned her pain into headlines. But she didn't. Because Tashira understood something most people never do, that silence can scream louder than any public meltdown ever could. She loved DMX not just as a husband, but as a broken man fighting his demons. She saw his vulnerability, his prayers, his pain. For years, she believed her love could save him. But love, as she learned, cannot fix someone who does not want to heal. When the affair with Aaliyah came to light, it wasn't just betrayal she faced, it was the death of a dream. The dream that their love could outlast fame, temptation, and chaos. And yet, she never turned bitter. She never became cruel. Instead, she chose reflection, understanding, forgiveness, and growth. Because sometimes, healing is louder than hate. Today, when people look back, they no longer see just DMX's ex-wife. They see a survivor. A woman who faced public humiliation and still found her peace. They see someone who turned her heartbreak into strength, who didn't let pain define her, but refined her. While the world was obsessed with the scandal, Tashira was focused on her serenity. She didn't shut down music videos, she shut down the noise. She didn't let betrayal write her story, she rewrote it herself. And that, right there, is legacy. Because Aaliyah may have represented grace and light, and DMX may have embodied chaos and truth, but Tashira? She represented endurance. The quiet, unshakable kind of power that comes from surviving the fire and still choosing peace. So maybe that's how their story ends, three souls intertwined by love, pain, and timing. Aaliyah, the angel. DMX, the lost poet. Tashira, the survivor. A love triangle written not